And we're live, people. We've got it going. We're something intro. What's going on, people? That was just me trying to sit down awkwardly. But Chris, we're back. We're actually here.
Yeah, we are. In a very echoey room.
Yeah, and well, don't worry. Look, people, we can actually touch each other because guess what? Don't worry. We've been isolated in our houses for months on end. Yeah. Like, we needed something to break up the monotony just a little bit. But
yeah, no, we've been safe about it. Washing our hands, social distancing, wearing masks, even on this heat wave that we've been having.
All that good. And oh my God, this freaking heat wave. Like, I now kind of feel like how the guys in Do the Right Thing did. And they did like that.
Yeah,
like, oh my God, they were just ready to tear each other apart over that heat wave.
I saw a tweet the other day. Shout out to my buddy Adam of Nightwinds, who he's like one of my music guys. He actually knows a lot about movies. We may have to get him on. Yeah, we may have to get him on. But he tweeted, "It's Do the Right Thing kind of hot outside today."
Yeah, literally, it is Do the Right Thing. Can we make that like a talking TV quote? It's like, it is Do the Right Thing kind of hot out today.
Yeah, I mean,
we might have to. All right.
Shout out to Adam.
Yeah, but so we're on a couch, but obviously in what will soon to be our new studio. It still has a little bit of work that needs to be done, but overall, you guys will have to let us know in the comments what you guys think and whether this thing could be something really special. Could be a permanent
and any
addition.
suggestions as well.
Yes, please. Suggestions.
Anything from movie posters to lighting. I mean, we got it down. Me and Dom know what we're doing, but like, we're always open to suggestions.
Again, because without you guys, we would not be here. So before we actually get into the topic of today's discussion, which is going to be something that, oh man, I've been waiting a long time to do this freaking podcast episode. We've had to push it back over and over again. But before we do, make sure you leave a comment and you click the like, if at all possible, and you leave a subscribe. And also hit the little bell next to the subscribe button because, that way, whenever we put up a new video. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But so, Chris, I feel like the setup here, it reminds me very similar to the shots that would happen around a certain study table in almost every single episode of this show that we're about to talk about today.
Does it?
I think it does. I mean, obviously the camera would be a little bit closer, obviously, but how whenever it would cut to one shot of the study group around each section, it would always be like a two shot of them, except for Jeff, who would always be in his own lone little corner on the one side. But yeah.
So I'm trying to imagine what you're talking about, but a few shows come to mind. So why don't you just sort of...
You know exactly what I'm talking about. Don't do that.
I'm pretty sure I do, but why don't you
do that? Look, your face is even breaking. Your face is breaking. We missed this. I really missed it because this is the sort of stuff that we can't get just over the camera. As you can see, this is a little bit of adjustment for us. We haven't been in the same space together for months. Like,
and there's no delay.
None at all. Thank God.
So dumb.
I was getting really sick of that.
What are we talking about today?
6 seasons in a movie, people. We're finally doing it. We're finally talking about Community. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get this friggin' episode done. I wanted to do this episode as soon as this show dropped on Netflix, and I re-binged the first 3 seasons in like 2 weeks. And I was reminded, oh my God, how magic the show was. But then I said, you know what? I'm not that same high school kid anymore. I have to actually, as painful as it's going to be, and you warned me, and everybody else warned me, I'm like, as painful as it's going to be, I do have to watch the other 3 seasons. I did it in a weird way, though, because I did 5 and 6 first, which Dan Harmon was still involved in, even though they, in Abed's own words, they hemorrhaged half the cast by that point.
Right.
And then I watched season 4. So at the very least, I could just brace myself for the disappointment, It's so weird to me how Community and Lost are so similar. Both 6 seasons, both great first half, very problematic second half, obviously, like I said, different spots for the bad season. Season 6 for Lost, season 4 for Community, and Community is kind of unique because Community, the creator was fired off of one point, but
so let me ask you this before we dive in and start dissecting Community.
Yeah,
where does it fall in your top 10 favorite shows of all time?
Well, it's in my top 10 favorite shows for starters, and this should tell people a lot of stuff about me as a person. Is Community is in my top 10 favorite shows over both The Office and Parks and Rec, which arguably overall, I can see the argument being made as to why they are overall better shows and more consistent shows overall. But again, for at least as far as my personal subjective top 10 list, it's not at the top because again, I do have, in the same way that which I'm still deciding on, if Game of Thrones were in there, I do still have to take the good with the bad, and I do still have to factor that into where I would arrange it. But this show ranks very, very highly for me on a personal scale.
Right. And so are The Office and Parks and Rec in your top 10?
TBD. No? That's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay.
TBD.
So Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, keep your eyes peeled?
Yeah, man. It still needs a lot of work. There's still 2 shows that I'm still a very, very long way away from finishing, especially since they just took one of them.
You better get on that, dude.
Well, no, because the problem is that Netflix just took Mad Men off, which I am beyond pissed about because Mad Men was like one of my go-to shows on Netflix.
Is the thing that The Office is going to be on?
Yeah, but The Office is still on Netflix for now though.
For like a month, I think, or something.
I think it's up until the end of the year.
End of the year? Okay,
I think so. I don't know. I haven't done research on it, but I'm pretty sure it's the end of the year.
So even though those two shows are immortalized, legendary shows that people watch over and over and over again, they're still not in your top 10.
Nope.
But today we're talking about a show that is.
Yes.
Talking about Community.
People. 6 seasons and a friggin' movie. Good God, please, once this quarantine is over, that would be the greatest thing ever if Anthony and Joe Russo actually did that movie. And they got the whole cast back, well, minus Chevy Chase, because Chevy Chase said he's never going towards it again, and we understandably so. But if they get Donald Glover back, and let me tell you something, Donald Glover was on every single one of those streams that they did together. Like when they did the live table read, when they did the initial interview, he was on every single one. So even though he's super busy, I'm telling you, like once he's done with once the production on season 3 and 4 of Atlanta resumes and finishes, I could very easily see him.
What are those, the last 2 seasons?
No. Those are just like the next 2 seasons. Hopefully, that's a show that honestly could go on for 20 years and could still be just as fresh and inventive with every single season as it continues to go. At least if it keeps going with the track record and the might that those first 2 seasons had. But so, Chris, obviously, we've made it a little bit of a running joke on this, on a lot of our past episodes, tortured a few of our guests that we've had on recently.
I wonder who.
That fact. Yeah, we'll wonder. I wonder if that said person is watching right now. But so I've tortured a lot of people with the fact that I love this show, and every single chance I get to make a reference to it, I do. But I want to know, because you've vaguely hinted at it, but I want to know your personal relationship with the show before we get into mine.
Okay. I watched this show while I was at community college the first time around.
That works.
The first time around.
Were you a Duchess at one time before I met you? Okay.
I was.
When was that? So that would have been around like what? 2000?
That was like 2013,
2014, right? Yeah. Well, I was still in high school then. That was junior and senior year of high school for me.
I did a year and 3 weeks, and then signed a record deal, dropped out, whatever. And so I watched it the first time around, and I was like, "What? This is awesome! Like this is literally me right now." Up until season 4, episode 1.
Yep.
And then, similar
opening
to my
scene.
experience,
What was it? The opening scene? Because literally, I know for me, after I finished season 3, I took a break and I tried to go right into season 4. The opening scene, I turned off. I'm like, no, I can't do this yet.
So I don't have a specific moment. I just felt, and this is before I was super analytical and dissecting TV and movies like we do now.
Yeah.
But I just felt a clear magic had lost. There was a different feeling in the air. Like I finished that season 3 finale and I just wanted to keep going. And then like in 10 minutes, I was like, whoa,
what the hell happened?
This is completely different. And I never touched it again until when it dropped on Netflix recently.
Yeah. And there is definitely something to be said about that, because obviously, again, the big story that everybody knows about that is the fact that unfortunately Dan Harmon was fired after season 3. They attributed to alcoholism and certain abusive comments that he made toward his staff of writers and everything. And that's probably the comments that the studio gave. But if I had to guess, if I had to like voyeur in a little bit, I would say that probably what happened was that because he had broken away from what the studio was telling him to do so many times, the studio had kind of been looking for an excuse to get rid of him. And then after season 3, apparently the comments got from the writing staff, like they may have kind of peered into and interviewed the writing staff a little bit, and they finally got the excuse that they needed in order to get rid of him. Because it was a long running history that like they were, especially with the first season when the Russos were directing every episode, like they ran over budget on a couple times, and every time they asked him to like keep a joke out or something, like he would still manage to find a way to sneak it in. Like Dan Harmon's a rebel as far as that goes, and I have mad respect for him, even if I've heard some of his more drunken, not making as much sense, kind of a little bit abrasive rants, and they do get very ranty, and they do get very Twitter toxic-esque, but overall, like I said, the man is clearly a very, very talented writer, and at the very least, I will give him credit for being very well aware of his insecurities, because and his own kind of mental problems.
Yeah, no, not that I watch Rick and Morty, but I mean, people can't shut up about.
Oh my god,
show.
Yeah. And the thing about Rick and Morty is that I've enjoyed all the episodes of it that I've seen. I've seen all of season 1 and most of season 2. And we've had 2 more seasons since then. Like they did season 3 and 4 since then. Season 3, I remember when that was on, that was in my last year of community college. And that show, oh my God, I could not go 3 feet without hearing somebody talk about it. And it was kind of one of those things where the hype factor just made me not want to watch it. I'm like, I get it. And the problem is the show was really good. But it's just the fact of it, like, everyone would not shut up about it. And I'm like, oh my God, I get it. It's great. You've had shows like that. We all have. But I guess how that factors in, it kind of is the opposite thing, and kind of factors into one of the many reasons why I love Community, is the fact that it is such an underdog. because for the most part, nobody was outside of a few select people were talking about that show. And then when I watched it for the first time, senior year of high school, after the show had finished its run, after it was on the air, by that point it was on Yahoo TV and it was already kind of on its way out. And I watched the first 3 seasons because thank God somebody uploaded them to YouTube. And I remember it was a big moment for me. Senior year of high school, spring of 2015. The school had finally allowed YouTube to be allowed by the school Wi-Fi. So you bet your ass that everybody that had a smartphone at the time was on. And this is in 2015, so not everybody had a smartphone yet. Not yet, you know? Yeah. So somebody leaked the entire show to YouTube, and I watched the first 3 seasons. But because I had a friend who had been watching the show throughout the entirety of its run from 2009 up until it had finished, he kept me informed on all the drama. So I knew, okay, after season 3, cut it, done. And I did, and it was a magical experience. I binged all 3 seasons, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And then years passed, and I kind of forgot about it. And then when I found out, obviously when the quarantine dropped, that they were uploading it to Netflix. I know it had been on Hulu for a while, but again, like we said on our Netflix episode, I'm not paying for Hulu. I'm not paying for Hulu though for ads. I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. I'm too spoiled by the 21st century. And I've been watching stuff on Netflix.
Spotify,
we got rid of cable for a reason, and it sucks now that YouTube is a million ads per minute. But I rewatched the first 3 seasons, and I'm like, oh my God, I forgot just how magical this show is. But the great thing is that because I'd learned so much about film and filmmaking since high school, I'm like, oh my God, I get each joke and each reference now. And like even back in high school, there were a few jokes and references that went over my head. But it just, the way that the show was written, it was just so different and so groundbreaking, and kind of showed to me and kind of exposed in a way some of the problems that I have with a lot of the sitcoms that I've watched, even the ones that I like The Office and Parks and Rec, where I'm like, I like these and these are really interesting, but like, what else can he give me? And this show to me, like, kind of gave me everything that it was that I was lacking from the sitcom experience. Granted, my own thought process on sitcoms is a little different from most other people's, particularly yours, but at the very least, that's kind of like where my love for it comes from.
I think it's safe to say that this is a movie lover's TV show.
Yes, without a doubt.
And so I can totally see why you would freak out about it, because it's so clear when they do these homages to all these old films and the way that they do their bottle episodes. Some are very Tarantino-esque. Like the big thing is when they're celebrating Abed and Troy's new apartment.
Yes.
And it feels very, I don't know, for some
chaos
reason,
theory.
Yeah, it feels
the
exactly
best episode of the show.
It feels very, I don't know why, just like, because I know the whole premise of it repeating over and over again isn't like a Tarantino thing.
No,
like,
it's not. It's just multiple timelines, which is even better.
Yeah.
That's a storyline right out of like a comic book.
But it feels very like Reservoir Dogsy to me, and like a lot of the times when they do like these bottle episodes, because it's just like so intense for one location, and that's like my favorite bottle film. So with that being said, like they're well read. They're well versed, rather. Well read is in the expression, not actually reading things. Unless they did go and read the scripts, which would make sense, because for 22 minutes an episode, these scripts are airtight. So it is, to me, the filmmakers television show, the film lovers television show. But the thing about it is, it's weird to me because I want to say it is a cult show, yet it was aired on a major network.
Right.
So like if you want to use like something that a lot of people like freak out about, and I also, side tangent, I don't think anything Netflix can be considered a cult. There could be like sleeper hits on Netflix, but I don't think, because I think that now they're right up there with like, what was this, ABC that it aired on? NBC. Yeah. So the reason why, and it does fascinate me because like it got this cult following on this major network, but it had this major network marketing money definitely in the first season. But I think it was just a little bit too much of a filmmaker's TV show that it kind of hurt itself in a sense for that.
And it only did more of that as it went on. Like the first season was still like very much like could be watched, I feel like, by a mainstream audience. But once they got into season 2 and 3, it was like, boom. It's like you're either in with the show or you're not.
Yeah, and it's like, Donnie Darko was an independent film. So for it to garner this love and this like cult following over time makes sense. But it doesn't make sense for me that this happened with a major network show, because usually they either take off or they fail. But this is like one of those rare, like, I don't know, I guess we can keep it coming on after The Office each night. Like, it's not doing terrible.
Yeah.
But could they just not find something else? Because if you know how those networks work, like you're canned after 6 episodes normally if you don't make that big of an indent, especially when, NBC was ruling the world with Parks and Rec, The Office, and
30 Rock.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, how did this show survive? Yeah. I don't understand it.
I think it's a couple of things. I think, one, you're also forgetting that wasn't the only show that was going, because Parks and Rec, Amy Poehler, Michael Schur, all those guys talked multiple times about the fact that they thought they were going to get canceled after every single season. So Community was not the only one that was going through that. So, yeah, but The Office, by the time it got into like
season 3, you think?
Season, yeah, gotcha. Season 3, like it was really solidified.
I guess I was more so first and second there.
With Parks and Rec, it was more so until like even season 4. But then you got to remember that like season 4 and 5 they were good, but then season 6, Rashida Jones and Rob Lowe left. So they thought that they were they were done, and then you had the shortened episode count for the final season. So true. Community wasn't the only one that went through that. But also, I think it was the fact of you're right because
real quick, do you think the shortened episode count? I don't think it's because of the viewership. I think it's just that that's the way TV was starting to shift at that time.
Yeah, it's so weird because Parks and Rec and The Office both did this, where they both started with like that shortened. They only had 6 episodes in their first season, which is ironically enough something that Breaking Bad would also do. So I still need to do a little bit of research as to why that
Parks
is.
and Rec and Community, The Office, I think, is very much so old guard. I think, but Parks and Rec and Community kind of came around a few years later, and they were sort of. TV's changing, it's evolving, it's becoming shorter, but it was around that
2009, 2010 period where TV was really starting to shift.
So they were like a traditional format trying to battle a changing landscape.
Kind of, yeah. Not to mention the fact that because that Thursday night lineup, because they all aired on Thursday night, that Thursday night comedy lineup between 30 Rock, The Office, and Parks and Rec was so strong that like once they saw this other show come on, it was mostly just like, yeah, we're on such a high, yeah, let's keep going. I have to assume that's where those ratings came. And I know the ratings dipped with each season too, which is another thing to keep in mind as well. So,
oh really?
Yeah, I believe so. And that's why I think that's why they got like a short amount of episodes with each season, and that's just for the original NBC run.
I would love to do an episode one point in time, although unfortunately our analytical episodes, we got to get those numbers up on them because they are some of my favorite episodes. But like, I wonder if it's because that's sort of like when Netflix is becoming a bigger player around like 2015, 2014-ish.
That was definitely when, because
Netflix and Chill is coming around, and then you have Hulu becoming like a bigger company, and there's talks of Amazon originals that we don't see for a few years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
I wonder if that's
why. That wasn't until around the end of Community and Parks and Rec. Because Community and Parks and Rec both had the same run, 2015 to 2009 to 2015.
Right.
Albeit one extra season for Parks and Rec because Parks and Rec, again, did the exact same thing that The Office did, where it started its first season in the spring and then its second season started in the fall of the same year because they only had the 6 episodes for the first season.
Yeah, easy to do that.
Yeah, very. So that's kind of like how they got that kind of how they got around and mixed with it.
Speak about the cult following though. Like, how do you think that happens on a network?
That part's easy because the show had that diehard fan base that. Because even though it didn't have like the same type of ratings, the general audience viewpoint that The Office and Parks and Rec did, it still had that cult, that diehard fan base that followed it throughout its entire run, even through to the Yahoo days. We joke about the 6 seasons in a movie hashtag, but that has been a hashtag that has been strong since the early days of film and TV internet. Let's call it film and TV Twitter. Let's call it, since that really became a thing in like 2012, 13, really. And it's only gotten stronger since then. And then you take something like Netflix. And again, this is where, we talked about this a little bit on our Netflix episode, but it kills me why Netflix does not do more of this stuff with bringing back old shows and holding on old shows. I think they made the dumbest possible decision by letting all these shows go off, by letting Lost go off, now by letting Mad Men go off, now by letting all these shows go off in order to go on to all of these other streaming services that nobody is going to want to pay for and nobody is going to watch, Yeah. And what's it called? Yeah. And now you saw how when Community went up, it almost had this second life. It like way bigger, way more watches than it ever did on Hulu because you had that fan base that came back and rewatched all the episodes. And then they were able to like kind of tell everyone about it. And again, because now, in a weird way, again, because this is another thing that you could attribute to another one of the shows that the Russo brothers were involved with in their early TV days with Arrested Development, where they were kind of making binge-worthy TV before binge-worthy TV was even a thing.
I love the first 3 seasons of that show.
Yeah, exactly. And now Arrested Development is a little bit of a different story, but now you see that because that model is so bingeable, and again, because it was really writing a lot of TV that was ahead of its time, really, you're seeing now an audience that's a lot more open-minded about the type of comedy that it could take. You talked about it being a very big niche and a very big filmmaker's medium, but now, again, we talked about this, a big part on our Netflix episode, is that this is a show, Netflix is a medium that is made for niches, And if there's one thing that has been proven, it is that niches thrive on Netflix. So
just look at how popular Firefly was.
There you go.
On Netflix, they got like a whole second life.
Again, that is another
to Community.
Terrible decision. Like Freaks and Geeks, Firefly, all these cult shows, they would get so many views on Netflix. Like I don't understand. Again,
well, I'm glad I watched a few of those before they got taken off.
Yeah,
but everyone's
seriously.
starting their own streaming service now. Even if it only gets a few views, it makes sense though. You want to own 100% of what you created.
Yeah, and I get that, but at the same time, as far as like a viewership content, I get it. Again, it's the problem of the spoiled part of me versus the practical part of my brain.
We'll see how Peacock does.
We'll see.
Was it just Netflix that kind of kept The Office going, or if it was?
Well, we all know that The Office had its entire second life on because of Netflix.
Yeah, but if it was the one that kept it going until now, like with the meme culture and stuff, will that continue now that people can't just put it on to go to sleep anymore, or will it kind of fall asleep, or will it have a third life? Right. We'll see.
Again,
we'll
it's what we talked about, which is that all of these apps, and again, sorry, because this is the community episode, not the streaming episode, but all of these apps, they have to find a way to be as accessible and easy as Netflix. And I find it hard to believe that they are going to be able to do that, because even Disney Plus, like, they have a buggy ass program. You know?
So with all that being said, let's get into it. We've sort of spoken about the magic of this show, which is it's very much so a filmmaker show. I mean, the Russos did some incredible episodes on that show with the paintball stuff. I mean, where do you want to start? Like, how do you want to get into this?
I don't know. Well, I guess kind of the premise. So you have the first episode, right? And the first episode is like pretty interesting enough premise. You know, your average sitcom setup. You know, guy. It finds himself enmeshed in a setting where he has to team up with a group of people, but like just how it's set up and how it's kind of almost more relatable than like most other sitcoms, you know, because now instead of being in like an office workplace or like a government workplace or in like a TV television studio, you're at a community college, you know, which like, I feel like, again, it's just an undervalued kind of underrated part of our society in general, because I know from my mind that if I hadn't gone to community college, I would not be where I am right now. If I had just started off at a 4-year college.
On this couch. You wouldn't.
Totally different conversation right there to have. But like just the premise itself alone is already outlandish, where a lawyer has to go, an ex-lawyer has to go back to community college in order to get a legit law degree because he faked having a law degree the first time. Like, that's already amazing in and of itself. And again, you have your typical cliched sitcom setup, wants to go after a girl, but I guess this is where, even with this opening premise, this is where Community started to differentiate itself, because rather than have like the thing, oh, he falls head over heels for her. No, rather it's just like, no, I am a predator and I simply want to have sex with this girl because I am a horny male and that is what I do. And then they bring in all these these 5 other crazy, insane characters who start off as types. But again, the thing that makes it differentiated is rather than just being the types, Dan Harmon almost uses those types as kind of voyeurs in order to kind of have our expectations already built up and then destroys them once we get to know each and every one of these characters, you know? And just from that premise alone, I feel like kind of it's already what's differentiating Community from everything else. And that's before we even get into kind of some of the stuff the Community would later become known for, you know, like the paintball stuff, the constant movie references, the quick rapid fire banter, you know, the little character isms that, you know, the Troy and Abed and the whatever, you know, like that stuff.
Yeah. I love all the relationships between each of the characters. It all feels so real.
Yes.
It really does feel like you're just a fly on the wall in a crazy community college. And so I think that the way they root you in that realism is how they get away with the dean coming in dressed up as Lady Gaga or as like an American like woman or as like whatever he does. Like he just comes in every episode in the most insane way. And so that's where you're like, oh, okay, so this isn't just a regular community college. That's where you forget, because that is a sitcom cliche, and it kind of does become it, but that's where, because the writing is so good that you forget that it's a sitcom cliche. Exactly.
See, that to me is what differentiates it from most other shows. Most other shows run with the cliche.
It's like the Kramer. He just keeps coming in crazy ways, except you're not thinking about it as a trope. You're thinking, like you said, you're just, oh, what's the dean going to do next? You're waiting for it almost. You know, you're waiting for him to pop in. Chang sort of contributing to the world building, being just this crazy professor,
and then how they even play around with that as each season goes on, like having like a different thing for him to do in each season.
I love great. That. And then you have, you know, Duncan, who's
undervalued part, like early John Oliver before he became super famous. And he's hilarious.
And he contributes to the world building even more. And then some of the other professors and other people that you meet, like the doctor who's amazing at everything, and it just gets under Jeff's skin. Like he's a classmate.
Oh,
but he's taking community college classes
just for the shits and giggles.
But it's all so rooted because I think that these characters are so fleshed out and they're so believable that you can get away with the nonsense that happens around them, which I do think since we've been drawing some comparisons, I do think The Office and Parks and Rec have, but I think to do that in this collegiate setting makes it even more tangible for them to have, for example, episodes where they're in a simulation spaceship and they get towed away, and their only way to survive is to get the message out, or they're going to get, crushed by a dumpster?
Yeah,
or something like that. So it's like, there's a believability there, though. The stakes are high, and you believe in the stakes, and it's good writing. It all comes back to Dan Harmon, which is why I think I tuned out in season 4. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Take over, man. What do you have to say to all that?
I mean, pretty much like just to bounce off everything that you were saying, like, yeah, I can't disagree with anything. Like, it's all rooted in the writing and the character relationships. And it's a thing that I heard because I watched a lot of video essays about it, a lot. And I'm really pissed because I should have rewatched them in order to refresh my memory. But the thing is that, again, how I would compare this to other sitcoms and kind of what it does differently. Other sitcoms take the cliches and they run with them. They're aware that they're cliches, but they understand that they're still rooted in some form of convention and they just have to do their best with it. This show sets you up for the cliches and then like breaks them down like a brick wall every single time. And it makes the jokes funnier. It makes the characters more relatable. And it also makes the dramatic moments when they do come even more dramatic. Like you take a character like Abed, who I'm still torn whether he's my favorite character, but I think he might be. And he was for a lot of people. Like the thing about Abed is set up as being just like another wacky TV sidekick. But then every single chance they get, they show that no, he is so much more than just being the guy with constant movie references. They use the movie references in order to flesh out and root out his personality even more and show like his deeper insecurities about like how he uses that as a facade in order to understand the world and how he uses that as like almost like a protection, a defense mechanism against like previous bullying, but also like, and it kind of, as you go on and as you get to know each and every one of these main characters, both the study group and the other ancillary characters that they interact with, you see all sorts of different things like that. Like with Pierce, how like, obviously the running joke obviously is that Chevy Chase did not get along with the rest of the cast, but I have my own thoughts on that personally that I can get into in a little bit, but how Pierce constantly sees himself as his own tragic hero where, he kind of feels like he deserves certain things that may not necessarily, that he may not necessarily have earned, but at the same time, like he still has relatable characteristics, you know?
That's the thing. And I want to go back to my point about these characters grounding you. At the start, Pierce seems like this pompous, rich, cocky man who's just at a community college to, buff his ego and to sort of, just kill time because he's so rich he can do that, right? At least that's how I sort of view Pierce. But then you kind of get into his father issues and you kind of get into his internal struggle. And yeah, they root them in some very silly scenarios. I mean, it was a sitcom of like, the late 2000s. It comes with the
early
territory.
2010s, but yeah,
exactly. And so but it's so believable.
Yeah,
that it's not just like I can't watch this right now. It's
like they started off by taking the former nerd girl and making her a drug addict, which I'm like, whoa, for them to do that with a sitcom in the first episode, I was like, holy shit. Besides the fact that Alison Brie is like my number one celebrity crush, but
there's always stakes though, and then they pay them off, and what you're left with at the end is further advancement and further and more emotional attachment to these characters that you're already binging and loving.
Absolutely. 100%.
I mean, I think the cast is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
I think that the way that these people became these characters, I mean, really, I'd still look at Joel McHale and he's Jeff Winger.
Yeah, literally.
It's hard to
the point where he's, again, I hate to say this, but he kind of fell into that trap that a lot of comedy stars do where he hasn't played anything else but Jeff Winger since. Like, I saw him as one of the villains in the first Ted movie, and I'm like, oh. And now looking back, I wasn't watching Community then, but now looking back, I'm like, oh, Jeff Winger. Yeah, like, no question. Exactly. Like, it's just, he is Jeff Winger. But even with a character like Jeff, who starts off as a traditional sitcom straight man, even with that, they didn't go for like the typical cliched route, which is where they don't have him like just there to like react to all the gang's insanity. They actively have him take a part in it and almost act him as like, yes, he is the voice of reason, but everything he does comes from a personal place. And even though he is almost always the most it's usually a competition between him and Pierce for who is the most unlikable character in each scenario, but he always manages you still like him though, because he always manages to bring it back to a place of relatability, because
I just think something that's charming about it is the fact that he fights so hard to not want to be a part of the group for a while, but then his progression and his natural sort of, you know what, these are my friends and I should just accept who I am. Like, his internal struggle and his narrative is just so awesome that, again, all the silliness and all the nonsense that happens, like at the end of the day, it's just good writing. I think that's what makes this show special to me. It's just the fact that like you could have the craziest stuff going on, a paintball war that destroys the entire campus, the entire school. But at the end of it, there's very real takeaways and very real character growth.
It's
how
good storytelling.
How do you weave those two together?
Good storytelling is what it is.
You know?
It's action. It's set up, confrontation, and resolution. Just the same basic story beats of any good story.
But it's not that we haven't seen the type of takeaways from other sitcoms before. We've seen so many sitcoms where it's like, okay, well, he's a terrible person in the beginning and he has to become a good human being at the end. But like the way that this show does that, and many other smaller plot lines, like each character, in my opinion, has their own growth. You know, Annie sort of gets comfortable with the fact that she doesn't always have to be the first one to raise her hand and answer the question. She doesn't always have to be the best. You know, she doesn't have to let her past define her.
And also, if we're going even more risque, she becomes more comfortable with her own sexuality. Like, let's be upfront and honest. That's what the show does.
That true.
Like 100%.
That is very true. But it's like we've seen all these things before in sitcoms. And I love The Office. We've seen these things in sitcoms. But I think the way that this show tackles that and the way this show gets you from point A to point B. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. I do think so. I think it's just incredible to see the characters. But I mean, we could talk about the characters all day, but to me, that they're not the only things that work about this show. You know, so why don't you take the reins on this part? What's a part of the magic? Some other parts of the magic.
Besides the fact of they work with an extremely limited budget and manage to come up again with some insane scenarios and just how they do it. Obviously, again, just take it in the way it's shot. You know, because the kind of the go-to sitcom shooting style at that point. You know, again, the Russos kind of changed that with their kind of handheld like digital, bringing the handheld digital like and single camera setup to Arrested Development when they first started it. But they arguably upped that with Community because 30 Rock is almost all handheld. The Office and Parks and Rec are shot obviously with the mockumentary style and everything. Mm-hmm. But this one, no, they are full on like doing like a film setup. Like they have a lot of still shots. They have a lot of dynamic moving shots and they do a lot with a very enclosed setting. And it's really impressive. And like you talk about it, it's like it was not like short hours. It was like 16-hour days every single time. And they would be like months on production. And they did a lot with it. And it shows in the final product. You know, you have top-notch writing. You have top-notch guys with the production. And it shows overall. And I feel like even though, again, like the problem is we're talking about TV and TV is always a writer's and a character's medium. So it kind of doesn't always give us a chance to talk about the minutia of the production, but you really do have to give credit to this show. You know, like when this show is shooting its paintball episodes like an action movie, like that is impressive. Not to mention the fact that some of the directors that they got, like that's the thing. Everybody gives the Russos credit for the paintball episodes, but they actually only directed the 2-part finale for season 2. You want to know who directed the paintball episode in that first season?
Who?
Justin Lin. For you wouldn't know this guy, but for all of our fans out there who are fans of the Fast and Furious franchise, directed 4 of the Fast and Furious movies.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, which is insane to me. And on top of that, I know I've mentioned this a lot. I've mentioned this in my top 10 Community episodes list. I've mentioned this on almost every single podcast that I've brought up. But again, it should not go without saying the fact that because of that paintball episode, the 2-part finale that they did for season 2 got them the freaking Marvel job that made them the directors of the highest grossing movie of all time. Like that to me, like already cements the show as like you can't discount that.
We wouldn't have the MCU the way we know.
We wouldn't have the MCU as it is now. Like that got them the Winter Soldier, which to me is still one of my favorite Marvel movies.
So I think that's a huge part of it as well. And I really have nothing to add because I agree with all of that as far as like the facets of filmmaking that, again, you don't really talk about when you're talking about a sitcom because it is more so character driven, but you notice them so easily, but also you're not noticing them because they're bad. You're noticing them because it's like the minutia that just enhances the product.
Right.
But also while
especially
we're on that,
us as filmmakers, because we are the guys that notice that. And that's the thing that I love is you mentioned that it is a filmmaker show. But to me, like that's what adds the extra majesty to it, you know, because to me, like I said, I'm a person where I've gotten to the point in my viewing experience where I can't just watch a show that everyone else loves. That was another thing we talked about. It has to have, okay, what's that little extra something that it has, you know? And to me, and for me at least, with every other joke being a movie reference, and specifically with the filmmaking techniques that they use, I'm like, yeah, this is my type of a show because of that.
But like being in a community college for as long as I was, it's the set is also something I don't really notice too much in a sitcom. I think great sitcoms have iconic sets, The Office, Friends, Seinfeld, to name a few. And Community is not short of that, especially when they expand and they go to other parts of the campus. You have your courtyard, you have your study room, you have your hallways, your dormitories, and it all feels like a falling apart community college.
Absolutely.
Which is, every community college is in bad shape because it's a community college. There are great community colleges where the education is awesome, like ours.
Yes.
Shout out.
Arguably, I think this was said, but like the best community college on the East Coast.
Yeah, it is. But the facilities are hard to keep up.
Yeah,
because it's a community college and there's like a lack of funding. So they nailed that because they obviously have professional prop workers, set designers, all a part of their team.
And I know that when the cast was talking about it, they gave a lot of credit to their set designers too, because those set designers came up with some insane setups. Like,
and the reason why I bring this up is because like it's not just the characters that are believable, you know, it's the world and the ideas that they're able to play with inside of the world. That it all just comes together. And so shout out to every small facet of this show, because this is what I got out on my rewatch. Yeah. Again, I didn't get to the 4th season again yet. I watched the first 3, and you know what? I could talk about the show for another 3 hours. Not saying we're getting close to wrapping up. I don't know if we are or we are not. But all I'm saying is I want to keep going on my rewatch, and we will do like a later half of the season thing. But if you guys are at the point I'm at, like, think about this. Like, did this stuff affect you the way it's affecting me on my rewatch? Because these first 3 seasons, man, I'm almost afraid to pick the 4th up again.
That's what I mean. It was the exact same thing with me. It was the exact same thing with me. Like, because the problem is, I like those first 3 seasons were so good, and I was in such a rush rewatching each episode. And then I finished season 3, and I found myself in the exact same predicament that I found myself in at the end of high school, where I'm like, oh crap, what do I do? Like, I know, like, even with the drag down that was season 4. And then obviously, even though Dan Harmon came back for 5 and 6, and people, like, even the cast members said, oh, thank God Dan is coming back, because it just didn't feel the same when they were making it in season 4.
Joel McHale lobby a bit?
A little bit, yeah. The cast, almost all the cast lobbied for a bit, yeah. But
I thought I had heard
the problem is, by the time seasons 5 and 6 came about, that it was just a whole different thing. But so, if anything, I guess now you kind of provided a good segue opportunity, which is that now we can talk about the later seasons, because again, unfortunately, Community did get 6 seasons for better or for worse, and the problem is you have to take the bad with the good, and unfortunately, you do still have the later seasons to talk about. So here's what I'll say: is that 5 and 6, I feel like, are held back by the fact that they were losing cast members left and right. Obviously, Chevy Chase left after season 4. Donald Glover left after the first 5 episodes of season 5. And Yvette Nicole Brown left in between 5 and 6. And even though the show definitely had a different tone, and literally to the point where the first episode of season 5, and even Abed in the show said that it was basically like a revamp of the show, basically. So it kind of got its viewers in the mindset of understanding they were going to be watching a different kind of a show. But I will say that, as kind of sad, I'll say, is the tone that it definitely went for those last 2 seasons. I still got a lot of good episodes, and there were still a lot of interesting episodes, and the cast members that they brought on in order to kind of circumvent. It was never going to have the same type of magic that the first 3 seasons did. But at the very least, those last 2 seasons still did, I think, a good enough job almost getting the show back to where it was, and certainly to me did a much better job of rebooting the show than the later seasons of Arrested Development. I think you can talk on that, because I think you have watched the later 2 seasons of Arrested Development. I have not, and I've heard those 2. It's like not even worth watching.
That first Netflix season is just
I've heard it's not even worth talking about. But season 4 obviously is the one dark spot in the show's history, because the thing about it is that obviously, again, the big part of it is Dan Harmon leaving the show for that season, and it becomes very clear beyond a shadow of a doubt. You know, some shows are able to jump from one showrunner to another and still maintain the same momentum, the same vibe. Community was not one of those shows, and it sucks, because even though, again, I still enjoy 5 and 6, it's safe to say that that's what killed the show. And the problem is that it would have been one thing if they brought on showrunners who could still kind of do what obviously nobody's ever going to be able to do what Dan Harmon does, but at the very least, we're able to do what Dan Harmon did. But the thing about season 4 is that, and to me, what killed it so much is because it got away from what made the show good to begin with. It kind of took all the characters and made them like generic sitcom characters, and it kind of lost the spirit. Like the characters had done like some kind of heinous stuff before, but they always did it from a place of earnestness. And then with that season, it kind of just all went away, you know? And I also will point out one thing which kind of factors back into my Chevy Chase thing, which is that everyone says that Dan Harmon and Chevy Chase had a falling out, and that's why Chevy Chase left. Chevy Chase left after the season where Dan Harmon was no longer involved. So I don't know, take it what you will, but clearly,
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually read an interview where Chevy Chase said that as much as he clashed with the creators of the show and some of his, cast members, he still recognized talent.
Yeah.
He still gives
Chevy
credit. He still gives credit to talent. Talents too.
Even Chevy said that had to give credit where credit is due. That it's like, yeah, I had not been. He's like, I don't care about being famous anymore, but I just care about the stuff that I do. You know, half the stuff my agents just send it to me. You know, whatever, and I kind of just do it. But with this, I read this and I was legitimately like enjoying it. You know, and the crazy thing is that Dan Harmon, Chevy Chase was not even Dan Harmon's first choice for that. Ironically enough, with that first episode where you see of season 4, where you're seeing like the sitcom inside of Abed's head. And you have Fred Willard in the place of Pierce. Like that's who Dan Harmon wanted originally for the part of Pierce. But looking back,
didn't even get to work.
I love Fred Willard, but
yeah,
it wouldn't have been the same. Like Chevy to me is an essential part of that show, you know. And to me, like
Pierce Hawthorne,
as much as problematic of a character as Pierce is, which we'll get to that in a little bit with the whole obviously how the Me Too and the cancel culture has affected community now. Like Chevy Chase is, to me, like one of the funniest characters of the show. Like he had some of his one-liners are hilarious to me. Like they're so funny.
Yeah, and the thing also that makes it so good is that like when Chevy Chase does say something like racially motivated or like sexually like, you know, disrespectful to like, you know, LGBTQ people, like there's always another cast member firing back in their face with something equally as vicious. And like it's just like such a good dynamic where like no one's safe and everyone just gets targeted. And it's, I don't know.
Because it makes the characters feel more like real people. Like their banter, their dynamic, their back and forth. It always feels like they're you're watching real people and you're watching real friends and real camaraderie. Like to me, still one of the funniest lines is of the show, and one of my favorite is in the what's it called? I keep forgetting the name of it. Cooperative calligraphy. Yeah, that's the bottle episode where they're all looking for Annie's pen, and Abed keeps bringing up a bottle episode, and Pierce is in the freaking wheelchair.
Great episode.
And then when they're talking about who might have sold the pen, and Pierce brings up the fact it's like, oh well, statistically speaking, it's Troy, and then Jeff fires back with one of the infamous Jeff one-liners. It's like, yes, we were all just thinking that in 1856. And then Troy, of course, just immediately jumps to like 1856. Maybe a ghost took the pen, you know, like Troy's infinite goofiness. I'm like, just like that so sort of firing back. And oh man, like.
But that's also a good example of the end of the episode where it's the monkey in the vents.
Oh my God, with the monkey.
The world building, how everything, as ridiculous as it is, advances the story.
And I actually want to see if you notice this. I didn't notice this until I watched it on a setup. On like a rewind, like a super slow motion with a YouTube video. They even set that up because in one of the brief, tiny shots, you only would see it in the corner of your eye. And this is how fine-tuned and into they were with the jokes. When Annie's talking about the pen, you see the little monkey hand reach up and grab the pen right before she said everyone's about to walk out, and she says, "Oh, hey, did anybody see my pen?"
I did not see that.
That's the thing. I never would have known that unless I only knew that because I saw the YouTube video.
That's
it was
awesome.
Insane.
That is awesome. Wow. That's just, I have nothing to say, but
that's
impressed.
The attention to detail. And also, another great thing is that another one of my favorite episodes, in the episode right after Remedial Chaos Theory, Horror Fiction in 7 Spooky Steps, where they're all telling the different spooky stories, which I love that episode. But check out my community top 10 list on the channel if you want to see more of my in-depth talks about that episode, is where they've been a running joke throughout the last couple seasons of them saying Beetlejuice. The 3-time Beetlejuice. And then when Annie said that in the beginning of that episode, you actually saw a guy dressed up as Beetlejuice walk past the stage. Like that's how in-depth they were with the jokes and everything.
That's awesome.
That is how that is just how focused and in tune and how well crafted the writing was, and to me, we talk all the time about toxic fan bases and everything. But again, and Community has even brought this up because Dan Harmon has brought this up because they said that a big source of their humor was the fact that they were so in tune with their fan base and they would go on Twitter. And to me, it was kind of like the first show where they actively interacted with their fans and the fans actually kind of contributed to the storyline. But back when it was actually a positive way, before it just became this big toxic thing. And again, it kills me how the idea of a fan base has become automatically associated with toxicity because it didn't used to be that way. You've talked ad nauseum about the Lost fan bases in the early days of the internet when Lost was in its prime. There was a time when being a part of that fan base was actually a cool thing, and it actually kind of almost in a way contributed and so almost made your viewing of the show and just you almost validated you being a fan even better.
It 100% enriched the experience.
Exactly, and for that to now all of a sudden be negated by the amount of toxicity that people just on the internet have to deal with, it sucks. It really does, because there was a time when being a fan was actually a cool thing. And now it's almost like you have to disassociate yourself and hide your fandom because you don't want to be mistaken for one of the toxic fan bases,
That, and also now it kind of seems like everyone's so quick to just check something off their list because it's all so accessible. It's like, oh, dude, I gotta watch this and I gotta get onto this. But are you appreciating it while you're in the moment?
Right. Or are you just trying to fast forward through it and just go through the next piece of content, you know? And again, I feel like that speaks to the quality of the show, is the fact that this wasn't just another thing for that people to watch on Netflix. It was, they watched it and they loved every minute of it. And once the conversation started up, it was arguably stronger than it was when the show was on the air.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with all of that. I feel like we are sort of rounding a corner here in the episode, due to like the length of the discussion, all that. But I just kind of wanted to touch upon the fact, like, are there any negatives to the show for you?
Well, besides obviously the later season 4, there are a few negatives that I have, but not to do with the show itself per se. More so, I just wanted to talk about kind of the cancel culture with obviously what happened recently with the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons episode and that getting taken down. Like, I wanted to talk about. I wanted to kind of get your stance on that. Obviously, for all of you guys who aren't as well aware, Netflix and Hulu, and one of the vast amount of things that had happened. I don't even remember what the instigating factor was. I know it was a fact of, because I know a lot of white actors who had voiced minority characters in cartoons were coming down and saying that they had like regretted voicing those characters, and how they were and how certain other characters who were still voicing minority characters were stepping away from that. Like, I remember, ironically enough, Alison Brie came out and was talking about how like she wasn't the biggest fan of how a white actress was voicing a half Vietnamese character. Which, again, my thoughts on that aside, the next big move was that in response to, again, I really wish I could remember what the instigating factor what this was, but Netflix and Hulu removed the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons episode from.
Yeah, it's still not up, right?
Right, it's still not up. Yeah, it's still like they just completely took it off. And then when I saw that, because of obviously Chang's infamous blackface moment, which besides the fact that, again, like they made it's still made for one of my favorite jokes in the entire show.
So like, you want my input on that?
Well, I'm going to do my input, which just all of a sudden just the hypocrisy. And once again, seeing these studios bend and kowtow to the crowd that, if I'm being completely honest, don't even actually care about half the stuff that they're trying to cancel. But also just the fact that, just from a logistical standpoint, you're going to take that one episode down when one of your characters for a majority of the show's run is a blatant racist. Like, come on. Like, just it's just like, taking aside obviously my thoughts on the cancel culture movement, just that stance alone, I'm like, wow, at the very least, if you're gonna be like kind of like the new form of censorship that it is, because that's what it is, it's censorship, you know, limiting the amount of information that is allowed to be viewed, and not allowing your audience to make a well-rounded, cohesive opinion on its own, and basically just force feeding them a certain amount of information. That is the dictionary definition of censorship.
It is,
but also just the fact that you're not even going to be consistent about it. Like, come on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hear you. I think it is one of those things where people need to do their research as well. I mean, that is what a dark elf looks like. It wasn't a color.
We're just getting into the specifics of that episode.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Chang, he wasn't Senor Chang at the time, right?
No, that was when he was just a student.
Yeah.
Before he became Supreme Dictator Chang.
Right. Yeah, so Chang dresses up for a D&D game to help Fat Neil feel better about himself, because the gang's afraid that Fat Neil is going to commit suicide.
And again, one of the it kills me, because that just, you take aside all that one little bit alone, the episode itself is brilliant for taking a very nerd-centered idea. You know, you've talked actively about how much you love Dungeons and Dragons, and using that as a way to help somebody get over mental illness. I don't know about you, I've never seen that in a sitcom before.
No, it's awesome. And for everyone who's like, dude, stop calling him fat. Like, his character name is Fat
literally
Neil.
his character
name. On the call sheet, it says Fat Neil. So get over it. Also, that's how they look in most portrayals of dark elves in fantasy art and all that stuff. And there's a completely different color and what would be the word? Pigmentation.
Yes. Like,
there's a completely different pigmentation. Like, that is such a unreal color for any human to look like. Right. So to me, I think the fact that they acknowledge it in the episode, and the fact that they play a joke about it is like, okay, well, these are just a wacky group of friends, and like I said, everyone in that friend group can dish a joke as well as they can take a joke.
Not to mention the fact that it's done
but Chang didn't even mean for it to be a joke.
He didn't even realize it.
And so the thing is, like, he didn't even realize it, and so, but it's just like so quickly brushed over. And so the thing to me is, it's like, if you're going to cancel that episode, then you got to cancel every episode that Pierce Hawthorne's in.
Yeah, literally.
And you got to cancel most of the Dean's appearances.
Yeah.
And you got to cancel, I mean, so
many things. That's what I mean. I'm like, look, as much as I hate censorship, at the very least, be consistent about it, because what pisses me off more than blatant censorship is just inconsistency.
Well, I think one of the things is everyone, like I'm not going to divulge any names, but there's a few friends that I've been trying to talk to about politics lately, because I've seen them get activated politically due to like recent current events. And when I speak to them, they don't know facts. They don't have sources.
Right.
And they divulge to me that most of their information comes from a meme.
Yeah.
Or comes from an Instagram
from
post.
Twitter, which is...
You need to look up the context.
That is terrifying. If we could just talk about that for a second.
Well, here's why it's terrifying to me, because it's like, if you're going to support a movement that's canceling culture, think about what canceling culture means.
Yeah.
History is a part of culture.
Yes.
Life lessons come from culture.
Yep.
So if you're going to cancel something, I believe you better know why you're canceling it. You better do your research. You better watch the episode to make your own opinion on it. If that's the source material, if it's something political, and if it's, for example, let's say it's a bill the president passed, and you're going to be out there screaming, cancel this bill, reject this bill, you better have read all the points.
Yep.
Because when you
better be well informed on both sides too, not just your own limited one.
I think the populace on both sides, the people on ground level, I like to call it, like you and I, who fall either left or right of the aisle, either one, it doesn't matter. I think that they just get behind the blanket statement, the cutout of the 40-minute speech, that one line that makes the headline. They don't go back and listen to the 40-minute speech.
You're
though.
1,000% right.
And this is dangerous. It's what Joe Rogan's saying. So if you want a more articulate way, if you want like 80 hours of why this is dangerous, just start listening to Joe Rogan.
Seriously.
Because
he covers it really well.
Right. Because you need to learn from your history. You need to learn from the things that were bad, or we're going to forget them and then we're going to repeat them.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think this episode was a big deal, because A, they address it in the show. B, it's based off of a fantasy character. And C, they address it in the show and all the characters kind of get over it, because it's for a bigger purpose. It's to save someone's life. It's literally to save Fat Neil's life.
Yes, literally. Because, and they do it. As he even says at the end of the episode, that was the best D&D game I've ever played. And I mean, you're a D&D guy. You can comment on that. Like,
I would love to be a part of that D&D
seriously,
campaign.
I want to be part of that D&D campaign. But so Chris, I don't know about you, but I feel like I've addressed everything that I want to about this show.
I don't know. Like, I didn't say anything crazy there, did I?
No, not at all. Are you kidding me?
That was very well
said.
On both sides.
That was very well said. No, absolutely.
I try to be as objective as possible, not put any personal bias into this stuff.
Yes. But like, we're just tackling that from an objective standpoint and stating what it is, which it is censorship. Like, we could say that that's what it is, because that is literally the dictionary definition of censorship, you know? So
okay, no, I'm fine with this. I thought this was a really fun episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an absolute blast with this.
I think we even toy around with doing another one when I watched 4 through 6.
Dude, I would be, I'm always down to do it. But so
Dom,
real quick, before we wrap up though, 2 things. One, obviously the same thing that we do after every TV show, favorite character. But also, I also wanted to know is, I wanted you to ask me, because obviously you can't do this yet because you haven't watched the whole show, but I wanted you to ask me what my ranking of each season of the show is, because that is actually going to factor into, that's actually a little bit of a subtle hint as to some more solo content that I'll have going down the line. But let's start with you. So who's your favorite character?
My favorite character. This is interesting. I hadn't really thought too much about it, but if I'm just going to go with my gut, I think I'm going to go with Troy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. It's a very popular choice.
Cause he, I feel like I relate to his struggle the most, like coming into a community college with one goal and one love and walking out of it with a completely different one. To like elaborate on that more, like everyone's like, oh, but you're the athlete. But then he falls in love with ballet, you know, and he's expanding and opening his mind and he's changing and growing. And that's very similar to what my experience was at a community college. Cause I went in there only a musician and I came out with the podcast about film, movies, and TV, you know?
Yep.
Because it's all about like expanding your mind and getting new experiences. So I kind of see myself through Troy a bit in that regard. And so, yeah, that goes to the relatability of the show.
Not to mention the fact that obviously, you know, he kind of starts off as an idiot but also like is a lot smarter than he lets on.
Tom.
No, I'm saying Troy, not you. Okay,
I know,
don't put words in my mouth. What's it called? No, because the whole thing about Troy is that Troy obviously starts off as like kind of like the jock-esque character, but then he immediately opens up by calling out Pierce and saying that is the harassment, dude. Like just automatically showing that he's a lot smarter than he lets on, and also as time goes on.
Can I just say one last thing while you said that? Just to go back, like one last sentence to add into the censorship argument. If you actually watched Community, you'd know it was one of the most fair and balanced show of all time and the most politically sensitive show of all time.
Yep,
like,
that's true.
for as far as sitcoms go.
Yeah, it's true. And but and as Troy went on, obviously, he learned to lean more into his goofy side. And the thing is that even though like his antics and like his dumb comments probably would have felt like out of place and just made him a moron in any other show, in this show, it like actually made him like a vital part of the group because he was still he was like able to embrace his goofy side more, but while also letting that like kind of show that like, no, he is smart and he does still have like a lot of common sense, arguably more than a lot of the other group members. And I do love Troy. And the fact that that show gave us Donald Glover and as a kind of result gave us Atlanta is already amazing enough. But for me, like I said, I love each and every character for their own little quirks. You know, I love Jeff. I even love Britta, who I feel like a lot of people is their least favorite character, but even Britta's got some hysterical moments to me. Shirley, Annie, obviously my celebrity crush, Allison Brie. Please, if you are watching this, call me. Oh my God. But
dude, come on, she's married.
But oh shit, I keep forgetting. Damn it, don't remind me. But for me, and obviously Pierce, who again has, despite his many flaws, is still one of the funniest characters. But for me, it's Abed. No question, it's Abed, because literally, if there was ever any TV character that was me in a show, it would be him. Like, not even a question. Like, literally, like everyone. I remember when my family was watching The Big Bang Theory at first, and they're like, "Oh, you're Sheldon," and then now looking back, I'm like, "Oh my God, I hate that so much." But like, I want them to watch Community and be like, "Oh my God, you're Abed," literally, because like the thing about I love about Abed is that. What other sitcom can you think of where the movie character is the autistic movie character? I would like to add is the kind of the grounding, the voice of reason in the group, and the guy that constantly keeps like everyone like forward focused and everything. Like if you think about it, like
is that autistic?
Yeah.
They
say it multiple times. Like
I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay, I didn't pick up on that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, that's actually really interesting. Then, that's like super early on giving a voice to like
autism. And in fact, that like Dan Harmon even said in an interview about Larry on Larry King, basically how he said that like that kind of like gave a voice to the autistic TV watching community that they had
to double down on my last
never had before.
Yeah,
that they would have, and that like they what they loved about Abed is that it wasn't like so many other examples of autism being displayed in movies and TV before, where it was kind of just used as a gimmick. Or uses like a really dumb thing. Like a recent thing that I've seen in Hollywood is using autism as like a superpower, which that's a different conversation in and of itself.
I don't want to touch that.
Yeah, no, but like that to me is like why I love Abed. Again, like he never becomes the wacky TV sidekick. He always has his own thoughts, his own motivations. Movies are his defense mechanism, but it's also his way of seeing the world. It's kind of the means of like how he's able to interact with people and like kind of like how he's able to function. And also it still gives us some of the funniest moments on the show too. And Danny Beauty does an absolutely hell of a job playing him. So yeah, it's Abed to me, no question.
100%.
I think honestly, the more and more I think about it, he might be the best written character on the whole show. Now that I really do think about it. And then
you can make that argument. Yeah. Do you have a least favorite character? We could just say the name in a sentence. I do.
I know who yours is, but weirdly enough, I think it's Chang. Only because I feel like if there was ever going to be like a character that's just kind of crazy for the sake of being crazy, I would have to say it's him. Like he's the only character to me that like you never really get to see the type of motivation and kind of where he comes from the way you do with every one of the other characters in the study group. Even with the Dean, to me,
good old
kind of gets some backstory. And the Dean, it's funny because the Dean was a character that I could not stand.
I was gonna say the Dean is my favorite character. But he's not main cast.
Right, but he did become main cast, though. By the time season 3 came, he was added to the main cast. But as time went on, like you did get a lot more into the Dean as a character, and especially because like, he became like a very focal part of it. And like the stuff that they did with Jim and Jeff was hilarious. But again, like by no means is Chang a bad character. I'm just saying like that would be why he's my least favorite overall. But I know who yours is. It's because you told me. It's Shirley.
It's just because she's too one note.
Right, and I get it. I absolutely get that.
I enjoy her shtick, but it gets old fast.
Yeah, I get that.
It's so nice. Yeah. And then she gets angry. I don't know. It's funny, but it's just like I just feel that she was the most
predictable. And they definitely kind of like they tell you she's the single working mom and everything. And they do a lot of funny stuff with her, but even still, I get where you're coming from. But then in order to wrap it up though.
Yeah, I just want to say like we got 6 seasons, but still no movie.
Still no movie. It's coming though. I'm telling you, it better be coming. Russo's, Dan Harmon. So I'm telling you, you have quarantine. Get on that stuff. Get on it. But so if I have to do my quick rundown of how I would rank the seasons, because again, subtle hint as far as some solo content that I have coming up. So I would go, obviously, without a doubt, everyone knows 4 is the worst, no question. Then I would do season 6 only because again, switching to Yahoo. Again, they had some good episodes. The problem is that because obviously Yahoo being Yahoo and kind of no regulations, the episodes got a little bit long, and so as a result, the airtight quality that was in the NBC seasons was kind of lost. And so as a result, I wasn't the biggest fan of how they structured it, even though I love the finale. Then I would do season 5 again. Really good season overall, just didn't have the magic, still had some of the most sad moments, but also some of the most funniest moments because cooperative polygraphy where they are all doing the lie detector test in order to find out if any one of them murdered Pierce is amazing. Then season 3, then season 1, then season 2. Because again, I know it's a balancing act between season 1 and 2, but for me, season 2, just because like again, that's where we got Abba's Uncontrollable Christmas. That's where we got Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. That's where we got Mixology Certification, which is Troy's 21st birthday. That's where we got Epidemiology, the zombie episode. That's where we got like so many great episodes of that, for it to cap off with the 2-part finale for a fistful of paintballs and for a few paintballs more. Season 2 was like one of the greatest seasons of television I've ever seen, without a doubt.
Yeah, for me, it would be, as of now, 2, 3, 1. But anyways, guys, this was a blast.
From best to worst?
From best to worst.
Okay.
Yeah, because I can't forget that Christmas music. It's just always...
the Christmas musical,
yeah,
which is great. And also, season 3 had Remedial Chaos Theory, which is the best episode of the show.
Right. Yep. I agree. So this was awesome.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun.
This is the tentative setup. Again, if you have any suggestions, any poster suggestions, I want to put one there. I want to put one here.
We're gonna have a bunch more neon lighting there and stuff.
And so, send us your suggestions. If you've built the studio, any of our peers, hit us up. We're open for advice. And if you just want to like contribute to making this a full thing, well, hey, we want to hear at least what you have to say. We might not take your idea if it's a bad one, but we'll listen.
Come on, dude.
So send it.
You want to make our audience feel like their comments matter?
No, they matter. We're going to read them. We're going to consider them. But like ultimately,
guys, this was a blast. Thank you for being here as always. And thank you for being with us for our first tentative setup. Again, it might not be the case immediately going forward, but we are working in order to like actually try and turn this into a studio. We want to take the next logical step, obviously.
Yeah,
so
needs a paint job.
Yeah, definitely.
But not to get too much into the minutia of that. We have some stuff we like to tell you before we get out of here, don't we, Dom?
Absolutely. Yeah. Talking TV, click that subscribe button, click that like, leave a comment, please. Let us know what you think of the setup, what we could do in order to improve it. Click the little bell next to that subscribe button. That way, you get a notification every time we have a new video that pops up. Our social media feed too, our Instagram. We've been getting like a decent amount of followers through there. We're up to like 315, 316 now, I think.
Yeah, 317 this morning when I checked.
Pretty impressive. Wild, it's only going up. That's awesome. On Instagram and Facebook, Talking TV, No G. We've also got, like I said, we've got a lot more content. We post Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We just had our Shaun of the Dead watch along. That was a lot of fun. We've got a couple more ones planned. You guys thought that you saw the last of Avatar last week with our Avatar episode. Think again. We've got one more thing coming down the pipeline as far as that goes. Chris, you got anything planned as far as solo content goes that you want to plug?
I have a new show coming out in 2 weeks. It's called No NPCs Allowed. It's going to be up in 2 Mondays. Do you know the date of that, Dom? Could you pull the date of that up real quick?
It's
going to go up at 2 p.m. on YouTube.
Is the 3rd, which means that will be the 9th is when that will be up. Monday the 9th.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so Monday the 9th at 2 p.m.
Actually, wait. Monday the 3rd. Yeah, because, yeah. So 2 months. So a week from tomorrow, Monday the 3rd.
Even better. Monday the 3rd. It's going to be called No NPCs Allowed, which means no non-player computers, which really just means human beings talking about video games or comics, but really like video games. I'm going to be joined by David of Flix Talk, and we're going to be talking our favorite retro games for the premiere episode, and I really can't wait for it. It's going to be something new, and my goal is to sort of show everyone how influenced by the film industry, the video game industry really is, because there's some cinematic ass video games that are arguably just as much tearjerkers as movies, aka The Last of Us and many others. So I'm excited. I'm excited to get into it. And I think what better place to start than with retro and old school gaming?
Absolutely.
Because it's where it all began.
Look, dude, I've made it very apparent that I'm not a video gamer, but just by you being interested in it, you and David, I'm super excited to see you guys do that.
Yeah, it should be a good one. And I'm really glad David's down to be on a prototype, because it's hard to find someone as cool as him to want to be a part of that type of mentality.
Absolutely.
So
you guys
that's
know
about it. Yeah, we're just always adding new stuff.
Yeah.
Always.
You guys know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave us a comment. We really appreciate it. Follow us on our socials. And Chris, anything else you want to plug before we get out of here?
No, just every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on YouTube, usually around 2 p.m. we have content coming out.
Absolutely. And so without further ado, people, thanks for being here. Thanks. Go watch Community. # 6 seasons in a movie. Let's get that movie made. And of course, as I always do, watch more fucking movies, people. We out.